last very long.
Okay, we're at 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending Nelson City Council regular meeting on October 9th, 2018. Make yourselves comfortable. I'm going to begin our meeting with Aboriginal acknowledgement, which is, Bob, can you just take your seat? Thank you.
Yes, well, where's Janice?
She's coming, but we're at 7 o'clock, we're starting.
Oh, okay, right.
The City of Nelson acknowledges all Aboriginal peoples on whose traditional territories we stand. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. There are no late items. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Daly. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have minutes of previous meetings from September 4th, a special regular and a regular meeting, and also a public hearing on September 4th. Could I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Councillor Warmington, seconded by Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. We're moving down to item 7A, which is, we have a request from Kootenai Co-op Radio for an extension to complete a project that they received grant monies for. There is a recommendation that council approves the request from Kootenai Co-op Radio for an extension to October 30th, 2019 to complete the project to relocate the radio tower. Moving Councillor Warmington, seconder please, Councillor Morrison. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We also are on to our next item, which is a request from the Nelson Food Cupboard. So the Nelson Food Cupboard is requesting us to waive a fee for the use of the boulevard on Josephine Street to grow a garden. There's a recommendation, then I'm going to ask for a motion to put this on the floor. The council, would someone like to either approve or deny this request?
I'll move approval.
Councillor Warmington moves approval that the request by the Nelson Food Cupboard to waive the fee to rent a portion of the boulevard on 700 block of Josephine Street for the purpose of a community garden is seconded by Councillor Daly, and we'll open the floor for discussion.
My understanding is that they're losing the current space that they have, and this would replace, at least in part, some of the garden space that they're losing.
Thank you. Any further comment on that one? Ready for the go ahead, Councillor?
I guess what I'm not sure of is having gone for a little walk down the hill from my house to look at this, is there's a lot of slope right there, but I guess they're the experts on how they're going to build the garden. Yeah, because that drops, like it's basically all slope with a considerable drop. So they'll do boxes, so they'll build up the street side to try to make it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, because they definitely need, it's not just like they need a significant raised bed, so, yeah, okay.
Thank you. Any other comment or discussion?
I think the only word of caution is, obviously sight lines are paramount. If they can't
Intersection.
meet sight lines, then we wouldn't be able to approve. So ultimately in the design, they'll have to make sure we're not blocking sight lines.
You mean for traffic?
Yeah. Pedestrians
And yes.
vehicle traffic. It's
Right.
I know we're already starting to see at certain places where people have spilled out into the boulevards that you can't see around corners. We know one by my place where that's the transit bus comes down there, and they put brushes and things on that corner, and it's hard to see. So we need to really make sure that those sight lines are protected.
That's interesting. It's something that people probably haven't thought of, and it's important that whatever is growing there is not impeding that. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering whether this recommendation at this time is premature. Do we need to look at designs? Or
Well, I think
I'm sorry. We have a temporary license of occupation policy where council has delegated the approval of the license of occupation to the city manager or to the corporate officer. So we have to ensure that we get comments from all the departments, et cetera, et cetera. This request, and in that policy, there's a fee statement. So this is just a request for the waiving of the fees, should it move forward.
Perfect.
All good? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have a wood stove program request. So City of Nelson usually participates annually in a rebate program for people who are upgrading their wood stoves so that they're more efficient, and there's a recommendation that the City of Nelson shall continue to commit funds to the 2018-19 Wood Stove Exchange Program in the amount of $100 per stove exchange to a maximum of 20 stoves.
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison.
Second?
Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Any discussion on this one? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. IODE Park plaque replacement. The plaque went missing from this park, and there was a request that it be replaced, and there is a recommendation that Nelson City Council supports the recommendation from the Cultural Development Committee to install a plaque at IODE Park as designed by the Imperial Order Daughters of the Empire, Nelson Chapter.
I'll move it.
Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Warmington. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councillor.
What can we do to see that this plaque isn't stolen?
Well,
Is there
I'm
a
not-
method of putting them in?
I don't think it was stolen.
I think it was just,
Now, when it, I would call it more
Misplaced.
went missing. So when they were doing the work up the park, I don't recall who removed it, or anyway, between the Cultural Development Committee and our Public Works, somehow this plaque went missing.
so thank you for that. All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have a development variance permit request from 611 Vernon Street to increase the allowable height and lot coverage. And this is in regards to the presentation that we heard at our committee of the whole meeting 2 weeks ago from the applicant who is proposing a 125 suite assisted living facility with some commercial space. And there is they are asking for a variance, and that the recommendation is that the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a 125-unit assisted living facility on the subject property be approved for lots 16 to 24, block 67, District Lot 95, Kootenai District Plan 9500, 611 Vernon Street as follows. To increase the permitted lot coverage from 90% to 94% as per the attached plans, and 2, to increase the maximum building height from 16 meters to 18.5 meters as per the attached plan. Do I have a motion? Thank you.
Moved.
Councillor Adams, seconder, to get this on the floor for discussion. Councillor Warmington. All right, let's open the floor. And were you going to say anything about it?
Sure, I can give a presentation.
That would be great.
Okay. So as you kind of mentioned, the applicant is proposing to construct a 125-unit assisted living facility with commercial uses along Vernon Street. The facility plans to offer its residents a full range of services and provide 24-hour nursing care for those residents who need it. The typical dwelling will be one bedroom units of just under 500 square feet, and all units will have access to private outdoor living space. The applicant is proposing to increase the allowable lot coverage from 90 to 94%. The proposed increase of 4% lot coverage would allow the development to add more functional private and shared outdoor living space for the residents. The applicant is also requesting to increase the maximum height from 16 meters to 18.5 meters due to existing site conditions. One of the challenges of developing on this site is that there is a very large depression from Vernon Street down to the lane, which is approximately just over 11 meters, the difference between the two. The zoning bylaw calculates building height by taking the average of all of the corners from the highest point of the building, excluding elevator shafts. Due to the large depression from Vernon Street down to the lane, the proposed height of the building will be 18.5 meters. Although this building is proposing to increase the allowable height, it is primarily due to site conditions and how we calculate height in the zoning bylaw. On a flat site, a 5-story building with underground parking could meet the 16 meters height. So that's something to consider in the C1 zone. The proposed building height at Vernon Street will only be 13 meters, which is 3 meters below the permitted 16 meters allowed in the C1 zone. Other comparable buildings in the downtown are the Adventure Hotel, which is 13 meters, the Hume Hotel, which is approximately 13 meters, and the Nelson Commons development was granted a height variance to 17 meters. Overall, the project respects the existing form and character of the neighborhood by proposing 13 meters height at Vernon Street. And lastly, the project will provide assisted living facilities, which is identified as a need in the official community plan, and we recommend approval of the variance.
Thank you. Questions through to staff before we begin discussion? Question through to staff first.
Well, we got a letter from the Salvation Army concerned about
Okay,
issues with this building.
okay.
So I was wondering if that should be answered first before we,
All right, so we have two, we actually received 2 letters.
I would suggest that's part of the detailed design process is to ensure it functions well. I think you have to remember this is a seniors building, and probably the number of trips that will come from this building are less than that you would see if it was a hotel or something where you have people in and out all day. But anyway, like I said, I think that's more of a detailed design question versus something that can be answered in terms of
this
these
point.
variances.
well, if we're increasing the building lot coverage from 90 to 94%, and one of the concerns here is from the Salvation Army is for garbage disposal, access to the lane, distance between their building and the new building.
And that's all covered. They're not asking for any variances on that other than the lot coverage, and that was to, I believe, to create parking outside.
Yep, and it was sort of at the request of Public Works that we moved the location of the parking entrance. They thought that would be more functional, but I do think that that the Salvation Army brings up a good point, and I think it would make sense to sit down with the Salvation Army, the applicant, and Public Works and come up with a solution that will work for that area because it is a little bit tight. So that's what I think that we could do on the development permit end if the variance is approved. So.
Thank you. Further discussion on this request? Yes, Councillor Warmington?
Just wondering about the points that Dr. Bibby raises as well about access to the parking at the far end of that lane, given that it is closed at one end.
Well, again, I think we will look at the impact on this. I think Dr. Bibby, for a long time, wanted access through there, and with the grade changes on Hall Street, it was really difficult before, and now it would be quite difficult to make those grades work at that location. I think you heard from the Co-op Radio folks that they were quite pleased that that was closed, that people were trying to get up that and sliding into their building,
Right.
spinning gravel into their building, coming across a sidewalk that was a bit dangerous. So, there's pros and cons. I don't think this particular project's gonna really change that requirement. We haven't heard from any other person that accesses that garage space that they've had any issues with the current access. But again, I think we can work through some of that through the detailed design. I don't anticipate, I think we can make, getting in and out of that building work well. We don't anticipate that's gonna be an issue with the parkade on the other side of the other end of this.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Through the chair to staff, so I understand that the lot coverage going from 90 to 94 is about courtyards and overlap, and I got that.
And parking, right?
And parking.
And parking, and covered parking, yeah.
But the other issue around the going to 18.5 meters, and I also get 4 corners, we're 24 meters at the back. Once we allow variance based on that drawing, if they find a way to bring up the back and would that allow them to raise the building at street level? I'm just wondering, how do we ensure that that's gonna stay street level at 13.5 and the elevator shafts above that?
The variance is tied directly to their development plan, so they have to stay substantially similar to what was proposed to council and approved by council. So they couldn't go much higher than 13 meters. It would pretty much have to stay exactly like that, so I think that.
Because, I mean, there is a potential to adjust that at the back somehow to raise that building up.
And I think as Natalie pointed out, you know, when they bring something forward, they have to substantially meet
Stick
that.
with
That's
that.
what they're asking for a variance. This isn't an open variance for any building.
No.
It's a variance for this particular building.
And
Exactly.
the what we still have is the detailed design comes, but not necessarily council, but staff for approving permits.
Yeah, and again, those are within the design guidelines that council has established, so, and, you know, that's where council gets involved. If you don't like your design guidelines, then that's what you change.
I see.
Because
Okay.
we, you know, your staff applies those, right? And says, and I think that's, you know, I've heard, for example, the APC involvement, you know, that's to me where the power is. You know, here's the design guidelines we have, here's what's getting built in our city. Is that working? Is that meeting the vision of our community? If they're not, change your design guidelines, because you got staff out there working to apply these, and developers that are relying, they're spending a lot of money on design, trying to meet your design guidelines, and it's really that's your policy document.
Got it.
Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question?
Question.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks. Sorry, I'm just making sure that.
F.
We have another development variance permit application, and it's to, around the appearance of a retention wall on 3100 South Solcan Station Road. So there is a recommendation on this one as well, and it is that the application for development variance permit to vary the requirements of the subdivision and development servicing bylaw 3170/2011 to allow for completion of the proposed retaining wall on the subject property be approved for PID 006-531-245 South Slocan Dam property as follows. To vary the design requirements of a lock block retaining wall to A, allow the structure to have 3 courses of blocks instead of 2 courses of blocks, and to allow the top surface of the retaining structure to have exposed locking stubs. B, allow the exposed sections of the wall to have a cement finish instead of exposed aggregate or a granite finish. And C, allow the structure to be constructed without a concrete footing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Morrison, seconder, please. Councillor Warmington, and yeah, we have a staff report on this as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. So essentially, this property is actually a little bit away from Nelson, but it's still within our city limits. So it is zone rural reserve zone. So essentially, it's the site of the South Slocan Dam. Currently, FortisBC is removing a few buildings, and they need to do some regrading, thus requiring some retaining structures. So the retaining structure guidelines make sense when we are in an urban environment, and we want to make sure that some of these structures are tied to the fabric of the city. And in this case, they will be behind a fence, so in an enclosed structure, and nobody will be they won't be visible. So we have no issues with recommending this variance.
Questions, council, or discussion? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Daly.
I don't see an engineer's report, so I'm guessing it's below the height required to have an engineer's report?
We do have an engineer report, and it's been verified by our building officials, so that it's good on that side.
Okay.
That answers my question, thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? Ready for the question?
Question.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is we have a request for a delegation to address council Well, we have two people who are identified on the agenda, and I understand there was a third person,
Business.
a third business who identified today. I'd like to ask those people to step forward, those three only, and you will have a maximum of 5 minutes each to present your case. And if I could get staff to keep track of time, that would be great. So the first one that I have here is the Kootenai Medicine Tree. And if you could just come forward, identify yourself, and begin your presentation.
Thank you. My name is Jim Leslie. I'm one of the owners of the Kootenai Medicine Tree, a medical cannabis dispensary here in Nelson. We've been present here since the summer of 2015, serving our members who require access to medical cannabis. So what we're asking today is that we be allowed to operate past October 16th. The reason being is that we provide a service. We provide access to medical cannabis to people who require it for chronic or terminal illness. So what we're doing is we're actually asking for the ability to provide this reasonable access that has been determined by the courts of our country and upheld in the Supreme Court of Canada. We're asking for the opportunity to provide reasonable access for an interim period that would take us past October 16th and until the date of provincial inspection on our retail non-medical cannabis license application. So here's the issue for us. We serve a large group of people from Nelson and the surrounding area who have proven chronic or terminal illnesses. That is our vetting process. That's how we know who to help. We have an application process. So this large group of people simply can't stop relying on us overnight, and we have no way to accommodate their needs if we are to shut down on October 16th. So I want to remind Council that the Kootenai Medicine Tree has always been in compliance with the terms of the medical cannabis business license since it was issued to us after going through that application process. We are seeking a provincial license for non-medical retail cannabis sales. So that is our path. We're not dodging, trying to stay at doing what we're doing. This is the path we're on. We are asking to remain open in the interim period until provincial licensing comes through, and that may very well take us past December 31st of this year, which is when these business licenses expire naturally. So people will not be able to access in a lawful manner the cannabis products that they have come to rely upon to improve their quality of life and sustain their health while we are seeking a license if we must close our dispensary in Nelson on the 16th. This would create an access crisis in this community, and indeed in the country, if we can look at it that way, that we have never faced as an industry or as a group of patients across this country, even in this town. In 20 years, access has only been increasing and being made more open to the people who require it. Testing is ongoing. Our industry has risen up to this challenge. So we're in a position where if we follow the mandate of council and you ask us or you demand that you revoke our business licenses and ask that we close, these sick people, many of whom voted for you and put you in these seats today, will not have the medicine they need to survive in many cases. There's many people in the room right now who rely on our products and products of other dispensaries in this community to sustain their health. And we're talking some of the most debilitating illnesses you could imagine. So there are very serious issues at stake beyond just the ability of Nelson to revoke these business licenses and to try and draw parallel to provincial law. This, I would suggest, eclipses that. It is an unfair burden to shut our doors for what could be up to 3 months while we go through the provincial part of the application and then the provincial inspection, which is the red line in the sand for all dispensaries, and then the municipal end of the application. So what I'm saying is we would really appreciate the ability to operate past the 16th without the 20-point penalty deduction off our scoring matrix for our municipal end of our application. If you do that, I guarantee you, nobody in this room who represents a dispensary will do any business past the point of provincial inspection. I guarantee you that, because if we do, we lose our license application. We're gone, we're out. We have nowhere to go. Our business is over. That's the true red line. And when it comes down to provincial law or the constitutional rights of the sickest citizens of this community, I would suggest and I would ask respectfully that you would allow us the opportunity to continue moving past the 16th without penalty. Doesn't mean that you're standing up for what we're doing or promoting it, but you are simply making a decision based on compassion and courage and constitutional law and case law that supports the sickest members of this community in the gap that will come if we are to shut down on the 16th. As I said, I've been in this business for almost, 20 years now, okay? And I have never seen an access crisis like this facing us. To this day, I have members coming into my dispensary every single day. They're buying and they're storing it. They're not paying for groceries. They're not paying for some of their bills. These are senior citizens and the families of sick kids and everybody else in here. They are panic buying because of this announced state of closure. People are crying in our dispensary. They're just overwhelmed with it. So
Mr. Leslie, I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Absolutely. I think I've proven my point. This has enormous impact on these people. So I just ask that you seriously consider their rights and our ability to serve them in the interim period. And I guarantee that we will seek that provincial license. We will not go against any type of business beyond medical dispensing. This is simply a stopgap measure to prevent a crisis.
Thanks, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Leaf Cross. Leaf Cross. Please step forward, identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Vic Olak. I'm one of the directors at Leaf Cross Health Society. And
my name is Cora Muehlner, and I am the manager at Leaf Cross Health Society.
Firstly, I'd like to thank this current council and city staff up to this point for their hard work for creating the framework for the medical and recreational cannabis industry. I know it's been a long journey for all of us, and I would like to let the city know that I have already submitted an application to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulatory Board to obtain a non-medical cannabis retail license. However, this processing time frame is undetermined by their office, and based on some articles, this may take up to 18 months. Because of this uncertain time frame, I am standing here today to ask the City Council and City staff to consider the extension of our medical business license during this transitional period. I would like the Council to consider and recognize the economic value that the current 5 dispensaries contribute to the City of Nelson. Currently, the 5 dispensaries employ up to approximately 40 local residents, and this number does not include the local suppliers who are also registered corporations who pay taxes, and also employs local residents. With the termination of the medical cannabis license and the demerit deduction of the metric point system, it forces all dispensaries who want to comply to shut down as of October 16th, which means I will have to lay off my 10 staff, 10 local residents. And it will leave an opportunity for the local black market to strive. Again, I want the city and staff to recognize that we will comply with the city's decision, but we hope that you will take our concerns into consideration. We look forward to creating a mutual beneficial relationship with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And we have one more business that is asked to...
I just would like to say something as an individual in our time frame, as well as being on the team of Leaf Cross, because I've worked in the service industry in Nelson for 10 years now, 8 of which have been spent in various sectors of the medical cannabis industry. For 3 years, I've been employed at Leaf Cross as the store manager, where I receive fair salary pay and full health benefits through the Nelson and District Chamber of Commerce. They co-funded me through a certification program via the states, which basically taught me best practice in distribution of medical cannabis. My concern today is that the premature nullification of our permit to operate will drive the medical cannabis community, including patients and employees, back to the black market or illicit cannabis operations and commerce. Basically, I mean, Nelson is not a fun place to be unemployed, and I think that we have very strong people behind us. Some of us here are really here to lead the industry as cannabis professionals. I'm here to ask the community to help support us in this interim period. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next business owner, please. Third and final. And what's the name of your business and who's presenting, please?
Hi, my name is Lindsay, and I am the president of the Kootenay United Cannabis Association, and I am also the founder of a cannabis literacy program.
I'm sorry, you're
by-
not a business? Then this time slot was for business owners?
Oh.
It was for a business owner?
Am I taking some? Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. A little communication.
No,
goes
there's
a long
a
way.
third, there were 3 businesses that asked to present. That's all that we're allowing this evening. And so which business do you represent?
I represent a cannabis literacy program and the Kootenay United Cannabis Association.
No, sorry,
I
that's not that was not the one who
I
requested a
understand what you're
sorry, I'm
saying.
going to have to ask you to make room for the business owner that did
I
request.
absolutely will.
Thank
I would
you.
like to request a few minutes to speak
No,
following.
no, not at this time. Not at this time. I can't allow that, but I will, you can talk to counselors after this meeting but no, not at this meeting. Could the business owner that requested time step forward, please?
We
Thank
have
you.
a lot of people here interested in this
Well, I'm
conversation.
sorry that we have 3 businesses that are presenting and that's all.
Hello, Council. My name is Fred Pels. I'm the CEO of The Green Room on Victoria Street. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak again. I share many concerns with the people that spoke previously, so I won't repeat many of them. Just wanted to say that I think we have a good community of operators here, best practices in place. That being said, removing these business licenses is my biggest concern. As last time I spoke to you, again, we have staff employed. I have 10 amazing staff members that live here that are very important to me and I think to the community. That being said, I'm not looking for you to overlook the regulation of the Cannabis Act past the 17th, but by removing the business license, regardless of whether or not myself or my counterparts in the industry sell cannabis, we have to close our doors. We don't have a business license. So that's a big concern for someone like myself who has a different business plan that is able to operate without illegally dispensing or gray market dispensing, whatever you want to call it. So how do we continue to operate in any capacity moving forward should my peers in the industry find a different way to operate or maintain anything? So it's not really up to the city resources to enforce cannabis after the Cannabis Act is in place. So I don't know why the municipality necessarily has to pull our licenses. That being said, I know myself and some of my peers in the industry have been great members of the community. We look forward to maintaining our relationship, both with the police force, council members, and the community itself. And it's very hard to do that if we don't have a business license or a business class to do it in. So regardless of where you stand on dispensing after, October 17th, I still need a business license because I can't send my staff to work if there's no business license. So that, maybe a different classification, I'm not too sure, but coming so quickly, it's a very abrupt stop to any operations, and we provide more services than just selling cannabis, thankfully. So, I don't know, as an operator and as somebody that wants to continue doing business in the city of Nelson, how do I continue operating? It hasn't been made clear. Outside of course, the application to the province, which all of us have done, what do we do now? Like, what do I do next week? Right? So that's my biggest concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation.
I just, can I ask a question? And it's just, I missed the name of your company.
Oh, sorry, it's the Green Room. We're on Victoria Street. The Green Room?
Green Room, thank
Yeah.
you.
Front Street.
Yeah. Victoria Street.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your presentation.
Do you want to deal with this now?
Well, I think maybe we
I'll
should.
maybe make the decisions. I'm not sure if the person here from the public hearing is here. Yeah, so maybe we should deal with Hall Mines Road.
All right, so we're moving on to our next agenda item, which is Hall Mines Road. Yes.
How do we deal with this issue?
Yeah.
This
On the agenda.
This is on the agenda. It's coming up later on in the agenda.
Oh,
But we also have, we had a public hearing earlier, and the person who was here to be present at the public hearing around the amendment to the OCP is here, and we're going to follow the order of the agenda at this time. All right, council. So we had a public hearing earlier this evening, and there is a request to rezone 1109 Hall Mines Road from commercial back to residential. And there is a recommendation here, and we that we have. I'm going to get the first or the third reading on the floor, and then we will have discussion. So, that official community plan amendment bylaw number 3429 2018 be given third reading. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Warmington. Any questions to staff or any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Second, the official community plan amendment bylaw number 3429 2018 be finally adopted. Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Third, that zoning amendment bylaw number 3430 2018 be given third reading. Thank you, Councillor Warmington, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Discussion, any questions through to staff? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And fourth, that zoning amendment bylaw number 3430 2018 be finally adopted. Thank you, Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So should we just carry on?
It's up to you. If you want to deal with this now that we got all these people here.
Council, would it be acceptable for us to move to question or agenda item 10B, medical cannabis dispensary license cancellation? Would you like to do that now? And then we'll come back to our other parts of the agenda?
Yes.
Is that amenable to all of you?
Because there's so many patients here, the patient can make a statement?
Not at this time, no.
When will there be time?
Not at this meeting.
When will there be time?
There's an election process going on. I think that one of the things that I'd just like to say as mayor and chair of the meeting, one of the things that's really difficult about business meetings sometimes to understand is that it's not a time for public presentation. That's usually at a committee of the whole meeting. However, we have been dealing with the cannabis legislation bylaw for a few years now. We have heard from patients. This council as a whole has heard from patients, from store owners, from advocates, from the province, from many people who are passionate about this issue. And I think that we are well aware. No, not at this meeting, not at this time. This is a business meeting. Well, I'm sorry, that is not true. This is a democratic process. So we are going to move to agenda item 10B, and we will have a staff report on this as well. And this will hopefully inform people as well about what the process is and why.
Who you're denying?
Nothing's been decided yet. Okay, so I think that we've heard presentations from 3 business owners. I think that would you like to begin with the recommendation, or would you like to begin with response or staff or further discussion or questions around the process?
I think we should go to staff.
Well, I do have a question about, we have the 2 items on the agenda dealing
Right.
with cannabis.
Yeah, so as process-wise, and this is not unique to these businesses. Any business that a business license would be canceled has the right to speak to council before or after that cancellation. So this isn't unique to these businesses. What is unique, it is somewhat unique, is the fact that under provincial and federal regulations, these are not legal businesses. And even if council has a business license,
According to the Supreme Court, we have
Excuse me, I'm asking for order, please, so please listen.
and that's the federal government's responsibility. It's not local government's responsibility. So in terms of the regulations, if council has the bylaw that does not conform to federal or provincial regulation, it has no effect. So even if you had a business license that council issued, it has no effect on the provincial or federal regulations. I think everyone's aware it's not council that will be enforcing these regulations. It will actually be the province. They've created a security piece of their legislative regime, so it'll be ultimately the provincial government that would close businesses or not issue a recreation license if you're not in, if a business isn't compliance. So the other than symbolic, there's really, that's not going to change whether the province chooses to enforce or not, or police ultimately choose to enforce or not. That's in there. That's not a local government. I think in the past, you know, council has been, even before they had the regulations in terms of council actively enforcing the bylaw, you haven't in the past. And I think I've heard from this council, it's, you know, you're going to rely on the provincial government to enforce their regulations, whether, and if you have a business license, they're not going to change, they're not going to say, oh, I have a City of Nelson business license, so somehow I'm legal. Certainly you've heard from the minister that, you know, they see that taking some time before that actually happens. So we really, I guess, view this as just cleaning up the rest of our regulations to get in line with the province. So ultimately, access to medical cannabis is a federal government responsibility, and that's really the audience that, you know, if you're looking for changes, that's really the federal government that they're the ones at this stage has said medical cannabis can only be accessed online. They are regulating non-medical cannabis for retail sales. So we really, I guess, view this as housekeeping in terms of just getting our regulations in conformance with the provincial government's regulations, which is what we fall under. Natalie, Francis, do you want to add anything? It's, like I said, it is a bit unique that a business license for something that's not in conformance with provincial regulations is really what we're dealing with, and really our bylaw has zero relevance to the provincial government. If it doesn't fit with their regulations, it has no force. In terms of the other thing I've heard, the concern about the demerit points, I think this council could make a recommendation. We're going to have a new council that will review those applicants when they come in. So this council certainly could say, we recommend not to apply that demerit point in these situations, but ultimately it's going to be a new council that will make that decision. This council could certainly make a recommendation around that, but it's not, they're not going to be the ones that ultimately make that decision, and a new council could change that bylaw totally. I know there's some applicants. What I've heard from the provincial government, what's been holding these up are really incomplete applications from the applicants. So I would encourage certainly those of you that have applied is to make sure your application is complete and you have all the information for them. They've certainly told me that they're staffed up to process applications. In fact, they've been quite surprised that the lack of the number of applications they've had. So certainly, you know, we'd encourage you to, you know, try to streamline that as much as possible. As far as our staff are prepared, we're as soon as the process works is you have to get through the provincial regulation branch first, and when they have a complete application, then it will come to us to start our process, and we're fully, and that's a provincial federal thing. That's not a local government thing. And if you have concerns, really it's with the federal government. They've established that. And our business license doesn't change that fact. It can't override either provincial or federal regulations. It didn't. It has no effect if the if the police, as they have, if the police already came in, that doesn't.
I'm
the police
going to
would
ask
still-
for people to just
Yeah.
listen, please. This is a business meeting. I know.
We're not changing federal regulations by having a business license. It's that's a fact. They can still come in. There's, the province has set up a security branch. I think any of you that are aware of the process, they will ultimately come in and enforce. We don't know when that's going to happen. As I said, the minister certainly spoke to that's going to take some time. I think the practical thing, the only thing that's in council's court is, would you apply the demerit points for businesses that chose to ignore the fact that they're operating outside the regulations? Our business license isn't giving you authority to do that.
Okay, Councillor Daly.
We're going to have a bit of a general discussion before we get to the specifics.
certainly can.
So one of the things that I heard raised from the businesses that are going to have their licenses end October 16th is that, and ask that they be allowed to carry on till what was described as a red line date, where that inspection comes in. The province is going to come in and inspect, and if you're engaged in a business at that date, that's when you would be eliminated from being allowed to apply for a provincial license.
Yep.
So that we've allowed it and got to this place, and now we have this before us removing that. What's the risk of allowing that to them to go, our business licenses to go to that red line?
I don't think there's any risk. It just has no enforcement. It has no validity, right? It's like having a blank piece of paper for nothing, other than whether council would have our bylaw officers fine them, etc. If you're not doing that, then it has no force in terms of the provincial government. The police could go in there.
Well, as they could have for the last 2 years or whatever, nothing's
What's
changed.
changed
But I'm
is-
just thinking that
What's changed is the province has adopted regulations and the feds have adopted regulations that come into place on October 17th. That's what's changed.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of that this council allowed medical dispensaries based on the argument that there wasn't access other than illegal back lane access, that this would be better than that, given what the courts had decided up to that point. So what's the danger of allowing the license to stand? If it was no good then, it's no good now.
Well,
That's
like I said, I don't think there's any danger to council.
Yeah.
All I'm saying, as the businesses, it's not protecting them from the province or the police closing
Prosecution,
them.
no.
any more than it did last week or
I
last
think
month.
what's changed is now they have a legislation in place, right? 2 years ago, there was no provincial legislation in place. There was no security branch. The province wasn't dealing with it. That was left in municipal hands.
And I think we cleared it that we don't have any liability based on what they're selling before or beyond now.
I wouldn't. Someone could sue us, yes.
Yeah.
We're always face potential, someone choosing to say you authorize this, I purchased that based on the fact that you had a business license and you didn't inspect this, you didn't do anything, and
My other concern is with what was described as the red line, how do you know when someone applies, when an inspector's gonna come and do one site next week, if you've got an application in, or next
we
month?
will be notified when they apply, and we probably can get that information from the,
About when their inspection is?
when the inspections. The challenge will be, do we start to bring cancel business license one at a time? What if someone doesn't even apply?
Sorry?
What if someone doesn't even choose to apply? What are you gonna do with that business?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think the argument that council relied on for allowing them to be licensed would be gone once a recreational license is issued.
We have three.
Because then
we have
there would be
5
access.
businesses, and we have spoken to the cannabis regulation office, and 3 have applied so far.
3 out of the 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean there won't be 5 more.
Yeah. So what do you do with those?
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying the red line could be different for each shop or whatever?
And what if someone opens tomorrow? So I'm just saying there's some challenges and, so that really, before a council is, to me, the things that you can look at is, one, do you finish this housekeeping thing to get your regulations all in line? That's the easiest from an administrative point of view. As far as in that having any impact on the provincial or the police to make decisions, whether you extend this or not, it's not going to change that. And then, the demerit point is something I think is legit, that these businesses have raised that, will they get, if they choose to wait and take that risk that, the province doesn't step in between now and then.
Well,
if they take that risk.
You're speaking to a councillor that wasn't in favor of any point
Yeah.
system at all.
Right,
I want
so-
it to be a lottery, so.
Yeah, so does like that's, the demerit point's really the only thing in your court.
That's the system we have in place. Counselor Adams, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. I have basically maybe two questions. I thought we had to have a motion on the floor for discussion. and I
No,
don't think- I
not
don't
in
think
this
we do it
case.
time.
We don't have a motion on the floor yet because we're still getting clear on information about what the regulations mean, what the new law means.
I would like to make a motion that we do not cancel the medical marijuana licenses on October 17th and we wait until the federal government and the provincial government get their act together.
Is there a second?
It must be election time.
It must be, yeah. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder for that motion?
Well, Madam Mayor, that's not
No,
Was one of the
I'll get them to get
concerns.
their act together.
no.
I think
No
it needs
seconder,
to-
the motion fails. Go ahead, Counselor Sherbo.
Well, my point is similar to Councillor Adams. The point being that the clients can't access marijuana, medical marijuana after the 17th if we close down our temporary business.
Correction, Counselor. There is a legal way to access through the mail, and I know that, and what we've been told is that many of the products that are used for medical purposes are not legalized at this time. My understanding is that what's available online, please be quiet because this is a business meeting, and what my understanding is that the only products available online are just raw pot, whereas some of the products that are sold locally are refined. The products are different. So yes, there is a way to get medical marijuana. There always has been, and for those people who have a medical license. Would you, Madam, no. You please let your council debate the issue. This is no.
Okay, but if you give correct information, I won't interrupt you, but please.
Carry on, Counselor.
So what I was going to say is we're in the looming of a letter carrier strike, which could shut the post office down. And so I'm agreeing with Councillor Adams that we should allow our temporary business license at least go until the end of the year.
Second my motion.
If the RCMP or whatever want to shut it down, that's their prerogative.
Thank you, Counselor.
Put the motion back on the floor.
No, Counselor. Any further counsel? Go ahead, Counselor Warmington.
Does having a business license adversely affect the opportunity for these businesses to get a provincial license?
Good question.
No, I wouldn't say it would adversely affect them. Like I said, our business license has no effect because it doesn't conform with, on October 17th, it does not conform. Well, technically it never conformed because it was never legal, but definitely on October 17th, there's a whole provincial regime, there's a whole federal regime. Our business license to sell medical cannabis at a retail level does not conform. It has no effect.
And if I could supplemental, these business licenses expire at the end of December.
Is that our export? Yes.
So could I make an amendment to the motion that hasn't been?
There's been no motion. You can make a new motion.
Make a new motion.
Then my motion would be to allow the licenses to naturally expire without cancellation.
Yes, please, yes, please.
To deal with the housekeeping issue at that time.
So Councillor Warmington makes that motion. Is there a second? There's a seconder, Councillor Adams, and now we'll have discussion on that motion. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
So I have a question for councillors who voted for a penalty for dispensaries to, if they stayed open beyond October 16th. And so I think, I'm curious about what's changed your mind today, that now it's okay. I kind of think I know why. But
I take that as an
Just
insight.
quiet.
well, I'm
one
open
at a
to
time.
hearing why you would have changed your mind between then and now.
I don't think that's relevant to this.
But I think that you're going to have to, you ought to address that piece as well, if you want to have a balanced, equal field and opportunity for everyone to participate in the process.
I'm not sure if that's relevant to this motion.
But
Well, if you,
Recreational is a separate license.
all right, please let council deliberate. Please. I'm asking you to please stop and let council deliberate. We're working really hard. We've worked on this issue for about 3 years now, 4 years. And we're working really hard tonight. So I would ask you to be respectful. Thank you. All right. Further discussion by any of our councillors on this motion?
Question.
Are you ready for the question? All in favor? All right, does everybody understand what the
what
motion?
is the, read the question so we.
Okay,
So it would be that the medical cannabis business licenses for the Green Room Society, the Leaf Cross Health Society, King Canna Medicinals, the Kootenays Medicine Tree, and the Nelson Potorium be canceled effective December 31st,
Well, they wouldn't
2018.
be canceled.
They would have expired.
But then,
Well, that they naturally expire, sorry, yeah.
So that doesn't make sense to me either. So we're just talking about the 3 dispensaries?
No, all five.
All 5?
5 who have licenses.
And I do think we need to address the penalty for them staying open beyond that we already have in our,
So that would be under a separate motion. So what's on the floor now is what I just read.
So rather than, can I speak? Rather than canceling them now in October, we just let them expire in December because that's technically when they would be good till. And then it's up to the next council as to what they do at that point.
Punting.
So it is a housekeeping issue from our perspective, so it isn't really impacting us that much, and yet it seems to be very important to these businesses.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, like, October 16th, December 31st, it makes little difference to me. I'm just unclear, and so through the chair back to the city manager, is because of the fact that there are now actually going to be regulations, are these businesses still at risk that on October the 17th, the RCMP or the city police or whatever could just come in and tell them that they need to close their doors
correct.
Yes.
They're outside
because they're outside of
provincial
the
and federal regulations.
So
And it is fair that, certainly we've heard from provincial regulators that, that there is this red line date. If you have illegal product in your store when they come to inspect, you will not be issued a license. So that's,
So
certainly
that's a
clear.
risk that the business is taking, that
Yeah.
risk.
And I think they're aware of that, and assume if you're applying for a recreation, you're gonna make sure that you don't have illegal product in your store at that time, and unfortunately, that does include any medical cannabis products, and that's, as we said, a federal regulation. The province has accepted that, and that fight really is with the federal government.
so even though you say it's not related, I see that it is, and I would like to add to this
You want an
motion that's
amendment?
on the floor, that if we pass to allow the licenses to remain in effect there till December 31st that they've been issued for, that we remove the 20-point penalty from the bylaw application for recreational cannabis for any businesses that are open after the 16th.
I think that's a different,
It's a separate
that
motion.
was debated by council, that was passed by council. It would only be able to be brought up by a councillor that voted in the affirmative of that, not a councillor that voted
Against it,
negatively
okay.
against that. So
Okay, I get it. So that's, okay, so anyone else can
I
bring
think the
that.
only, so I think you need to deal, I think this resolution stands on its own, that we, council would direct staff not to cancel any existing medical cannabis regulations. I think that would be simpler, right? As opposed to, they have a valid business license. I think all you're making a decision on is not to cancel those, and they would expire at the end of December, or hopefully we will hear from people that they have been successful with their applications, and they're applying for a license under the new non-medical
Question.
cannabis.
I'd like to call the question.
There's still discussion happening?
I'm concerned that businesses, that once we allow them their license to continue to the 31st, that the businesses that are already established and have been operating and have a history would be then at a disadvantage if they're going to be penalized.
They won't, they will fit, I think that's a different discussion. You're dealing with the business license bylaw.
I get it, but there's a connection between
Yeah,
the
just let me-
application for,
Let me just finish. So on the business license piece, they would be in compliance with your bylaw. There's still the zoning piece, which I think is a separate issue. There is a demerit point. That right now they're operating outside zoning, and, you know, I think that's a different one that you might want to make a decision on.
well, I need that decided before I can then vote on allowing this. Otherwise,
Well, you need to
we're
deal
gonna
with
have-
the business license, because if we cancel their business license, they're offside on the business license, so they'd get demerit point deductions
Got
for
it.
that one. Right.
And
So I
if we
think it
allow
is.
it and they go beyond there, they're gonna be penalized where someone that hasn't been in business would have an advantage
And
by not being.
These existing businesses already have an advantage. I don't see your point. Anyway, go ahead.
And my feeling is that even though the business license is extended till expiry in December, that it's the business's choice whether they operate or not.
Yeah.
So we're not forcing them to do this and then they get demerit points. It's a decision that they make on
Yeah.
their own as to the risks that they face in that regard.
Through the chair, I get it, but we made up the rules.
It's re-debating.
You know, so we can
whatever.
change
So,
that.
so I'm going to bring us back to the main motion. I'm going to bring us back to the main motion. The motion is to allow the 5 business licenses to naturally expire as of December 31st. Everyone's clear on that?
The resolution is that we would not cancel their.
That we
business
won't
license.
cancel,
And that they naturally expire.
and that they naturally expire. Are people clear on that?
Yes, question.
Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? We have one opposed, and motion carries.
The second thing that this council might want to deal with is none of these businesses are operating within zoning. So they're outside your bylaws on zoning. And Councillor is correct in terms of there's a potential to have demerit points because of that. So if this council wants to make a recommendation that not be, demerit points not be attached to the fact that they're operating outside. We gave a grace period to the end of, or this October 16th to bring both in line. So you might want to do the same thing on the zoning pieces, bring that in line, that we would not consider zoning as demerit, not operating within zoning as demerit points till the end of December as well.
I will move that.
Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Is there discussion on that? Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Good. All right, moving back up the agenda. I'm just moving back up. Sorry, folks, I'm just looking for my,
To the permissive tax exemption adoption.
thank you. All right, we had permissive tax exemption amendment bylaw, and we have had discussions, we've had 3 readings on this and discussion. And the recommendation is that council, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson permissive tax exemption amendment bylaw number 3425/2018 be finally adopted.
What number are you on?
Back up where we were.
Thank you.
Back up where we were, yeah.
So we're
9B.
Sorry.
9B.
B, sorry.
9B, yes. So you're moving, thank you, Councillor.
second.
And all in favor? Opposed, the motion carries. People, could I have you take your discussions outside, please, while we complete our business? Thank you. We have 5-year financial plan amendment. And this is that the 5-year financial plan 2018 to 2022 amendment bylaw number 3435/2018 be introduced and read a first time and read a second time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Seconder, please. Councillor Warmington. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And secondly, that the 5-year financial plan 2018-22 amendment bylaw number 3435/2018 be read a third time. Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Seconded by Councillor Adams. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I think it's important to maybe provide a bit of an
Thank you.
update.
Yeah.
Yeah, on this, just what
Yeah.
this is about.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Should have done that before we passed it.
the,
Did you read your agenda?
Yes.
Good.
Close the door.
the first topic on the list of what we had changed, the financial plan was just a commitment that was made when we were dealing with the COLO funding that we needed to do the upgrade once we got some of the pricing and being able to add the redundant cooling. So that's just sort of a follow-up or a completion of that request. The second one related to the fact that recently council saw that Chris Gainham, the manager of operations at Public Works, had submitted a rather large sewage treatment plan funding application under the infrastructure grant from Bell Canada.
Could you
And
speak up, please?
and so in doing that, we're just following up because if we're going to have that in the financial plan, as far as this council voting on approving that or having a resolution that committed us to doing our part, we thought it was important to have that in the financial plan. So that's what you'll see, and you'll see that in the updated documents for the sewer utility fees and the projections for the next 20 years. The last one that we did is that we also put in place the ability for funding to be available for any holiday lighting that council may decide to support, and what that looks like, and making sure that that's in the financial plan just allows council to be able to support something along that line. And we have Natalie here today, who has a bit of an idea on some of the planning that we would like to look as a pilot for 2018 season.
Great, so I've placed a memo on everybody's desk so you can review it. Just to give a bit of an update on what's going on with the holiday lighting and decorative lighting downtown. So we have formed a committee. It consists of a member from the business community, the cultural development committee, the heritage working group, a member from the public, as well as the operations manager from Nelson Hydro to keep us a little bit grounded. So the committee, oh, it's good. So the committee has made the following recommendations. So they're suggesting that we wrap all of the street trees downtown in warm white lights. And these lights they're proposing should be left on all year long. And then they're also suggesting that the 2 coniferous trees on the 400 block of Baker Street, that all of the lighting be entirely replaced. It's uncoordinated, dulled, and damaged, and that it be replaced with larger white, warm white bulbs all the way up the tree, and that those trees only be lit during the holiday season.
Yes.
And they also recommend that the lighting be installed and maintained by the city rather than volunteers. The volunteer group burnt out over the years. And
Oh my God, another one.
Let's do one more, you get one more.
Okay, you get 3. So those are some of the recommendations that they're making that we can try and implement this year. The lighting committee is also proposing that we add decorative wreaths that we can attach to the street lights, as well as add catenary lighting all the way down Baker Street. But those 2 things cannot be done until the Baker Street upgrades are taken place because our current lighting can't support those additions. So we're suggesting that we do a pilot project on the 400 block of Baker Street just to test the way that it looks, make sure that we're happy with the lighting. And also in the past, we've incurred some vandalism that's damaged the lighting. It's cost us up to $15,000 to replace.
Per
and
year.
So per year.
Yeah.
And so we've asked the consultant and the supplier what they've done to sort of mitigate vandalism, and they basically just made it so it's out of arm's reach. So we'll try it. We're recommending that we try it this year on a pilot project, and if things go well, that maybe we look at expanding it along Baker Street. So those are some of the recommendations, and on the back page is some example photos.
Any motion?
So in terms of, Natalie, maybe just give it's in the financial plan, the staff is moving ahead if this is approved within that. Natalie, maybe just in terms of timelines to order lighting, the cost of lighting, just this section of lighting.
So the timelines, we'd need to put a request out pretty much this week to be able to get lighting for mid-November. To do that block of Baker Street will cost approximately $10,000, give or take. And
For supplies only.
for supplies only, that won't include labor. And they're tall trees, so we'll need somebody with a bucket truck to do it. So it is quite a big project to undertake.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the primary reasons that we want to do a pilot, make sure it works, make sure we don't get that vandalism that we've had in the past. When I first got here, we had tree lights on all our side streets up and down Baker Street, and we ended up with 1 or 2 light bulbs burning per tree because the cost of trying to maintain that. People would unfortunately come out of the bars, rip them out of the trees. And I think the lighting hopefully has improved between now and then because we didn't have just cheap lighting from Walmart either. We had proper street lighting trees, and this is proper street lighting trees. This isn't strands from the neighborhood corner store. It's very expensive. We need to make sure that we're not incurring that vandalism because that council back in the day, and that was probably 3 or 4 councils ago. One year we spent $30,000 to try to improve that lighting.
And it didn't last long. No. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
So are we gonna contract it out, the installation, or
No, our
we're gonna do
public works staff will do that, but again, that's a fairly large commitment, and again, with the lighting that we have, or the power that we have in the downtown right now, even that is, getting power to those trees is challenging. We had, I think originally we had the power at the base of the trees, and that was part of the challenge was, because we had to connect there. Was where people were
damaging.
Yeah. So we're trying a different approach. Hopefully that will work.
Well, and as I recall, there was also an issue of things being screwed into the trees and affecting the health of the tree.
There was definitely concern around.
So is that something that we're not going to be doing with this install, or?
I don't think it was so much, as a tree grows, obviously it's got branches growing, etc. And now you've got this tree wrapped in these lights, and as it grows, it's how you manage that tree is another challenge, I'm sure.
Go ahead, Councillor Adams.
I just want to say, as one of the volunteers who helped put those lights up for 5 years or more, I just hope that this year because last year we had nothing. This year we get the 400 block lit up exactly the way you said. And I don't think we ever screwed anything into a tree. Not the volunteer group, anyway. Thank you.
Do we need a motion to move this pilot on the 400 block of Baker forward?
You can.
I would move that, put that motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Any further discussion?
I just, it worries me that the vandalism, that's just disheartening. And,
It's a lot of money.
and it's a lot of money. And I mean, I love the idea that we have, street lighting that would be available all year round, because I've truly enjoyed that lighting when it's been lit up on the Hall Street, the catenary lighting on Hall Street, plaza. It adds a certain, vibe. And I sort of think, like, if people don't learn to respect the efforts that, not this council, I mean, but that what we're making a decision on behalf of the citizens of Nelson who want to have this, beautification of the downtown, particularly if we're going to do this all year round, because I think that increases, unfortunately, the opportunity for vandalism. So, there could be more of it, and I hope people respect the fact that this is an effort to keep Nelson beautiful and to have that vibe. I have only one concern, and I think it'll soon be, and I think it's already sort of answered, because you're doing soft white. As we build more and more residential units downtown, and we hear this all the time in cities, it's like, wow, I moved there and then this happened and they put up this light, and then it's like, I think of, we're not gonna turn Baker Street or downtown Nelson into being next door to Rogers Arena, but I know that people that live downtown in that area, can't stand that those lights pulse on the dome. And that's just, I think that we have to be sensitive as we wrap up trees, that we're not getting up into those levels, and that we're sensitive to the fact that we have much more residential, permanent residences in the downtown core. So it's just a thought in my head, but I think the soft white will be just a lovely, and probably downcast, and now with LED bulbs, the quality is so much different. I don't see that as being problematic, but I think we have to be sensitive to the fact that we may
we're densifying.
see some,
Yep. Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, along the same lines, just, I don't know, we don't have any guidelines around turning them off, when, putting them on, or.
I'm not sure, Natalie, did you guys talk about, can they be on timers to go off at a certain time of night?
That discussion hasn't come up, but it's a really good point, and that's something that we should definitely look at. It would be nice to have them on at light, but they don't necessarily need to be on all night.
Yeah, and that's what my only concern was when they talked about here in the plan, sorry, through the chair, about having them on at night, so that's the.
I just have a couple of comments. I'd really like to thank the committee for getting together and really coming up with a plan that has some strong possibilities for working over the longer term. I share the same concerns about vandalism, but we can, I think a pilot is a really good way to start, especially when this is a big investment, and it's important that it works. One of the other things, and I'm not saying we should change this at all, but one of the things that I saw in doing tours in other cities, whenever we go to conferences where we have the opportunity to go on study tours, and in a couple of the places I've been to, I really like the idea of this. It seems like it's bomb-proof. They on the street trees, that they're in the grates. There is lighting from underneath, and it shines up through the tree. It seems to, and it looks like it's pretty much vandalism proof, and you're not wrapping the tree, you're not dealing with strings of lights, and it's a very beautiful effect, and you can have them colored or whatever. So maybe we could have a look at that as well. I'm not saying that I disagree with anything the committee's recommended. That's on the floor, and good work. So thank you for coming together with a plan. That's great. Did we have the question on
Yeah,
that?
it's been moved and seconded.
And we didn't vote. Thank you, Francis. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, folks, my computer shut off here.
It was an additional motion, it's not in the.
Yeah. Business license emergency.
Oh, we're under business, 5-year financial plan.
Road closure at Houston Street, first 3 readings, and I'm just turning my computer back on. Sorry.
Go to sleep.
It went dark on me here. All right, here we are. Sorry, folks. I'm at
Cedar Street.
D.
9D.
I assume it's
Thank
going
you.
this way.
I'll- Road closure. So, we have a recommendation that the Houston Street Road Closure Bylaw number 3434, 2018 be read a first time and a second time by title only.
What number are we on again?
9B? D, I'm sorry, D. Thank you, Councillor Daly. Seconder, please. Councillor Morrison, and discussion on this motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And secondly, that the Houston Street Road Closure Bylaw number 3434, 2018 be read a third time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Daly. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we go on to 9E. Whew. Oh, we already did that one.
Yes.
No, we didn't.
Oh,
This is
no, we
now the
didn't. Sorry.
regulations.
Business, this is for business license amendments to recreational cannabis regulations. These are the first readings of amendments for fees and charges bylaw. There's been a lengthy staff report here. I'm going to get a motion on the floor, and then we can have further deeper discussion around that. So one, that the business license amendment recreational cannabis bylaw number 3415, 2018 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Morrison, seconder. Please. Councillor Warmington. All right, so let's open the floor for discussion on this. Any questions about these or any updates?
Maybe I'll get Francis to review the.
Good?
Yeah, so hang on, let me get it there so that I don't miss anything. So the regulations are somewhat similar on the regulation side itself. The regulations are quite similar to what we had for the medical cannabis side. The difference being that where there was duplication, that the province is now doing it, and therefore, why would we make the people do it with our business license application? Because remember, the process goes, the application goes to the province, it comes to us for approval, goes back to the province, they actually get the license, and then they got to get the business license here, right? So this is sort of the last step in the process. So the regulations that are in there, like I said, not too much different, except that we brought them either into a line with what the provincial regulations are, or we removed them because it would be a duplication of effort, and there's no point in doing that. The fee that we set, so moving along to the fees and charges, the fee that we set in there is a $2,500 annual fee. So it's half of what it was on the medical side, being that a number of the regulations and enforcement, et cetera, is going to be happening on the provincial government side. And the other caveat that most municipalities are doing at that level, and that we're going, 2,500 seems to be the average in the province, is because we don't at this time yet know what the province is going to be providing as far as taxation to the local government. So this is, we're hoping that this will become known and that this fee will reduce, but until we know that, we think it's not fair because we're going to be doing the enforcement from the police side. We're still going to have bylaw enforcement, even though there is provincial as well, but we still don't know what is going to help us out with that. As far as the penalties go, it's no different than before, except we moved it from the medical side over to the business license bylaw that said if you operate outside of regulations, you're going to get a penalty for it. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Any questions? No. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Secondly, that the business license amendment recreational cannabis bylaw number 3415 2018. Thank you. Third time, third reading. Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Seconder. Councillor Warmington, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Third, that the fees and charges amendment be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Second by Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And please stop me, Council, if anybody wants to have further debate on this. We've been through these a few times now. And fourth, that the fees and charges amendment be read a third time, third reading. We're on number 4.
Oh, 4, yeah.
Oh, Nelson Peter.
Yeah, it's that the fees and charges amendment bylaw 3432 be read a third time. Thank you, Councillor Warmington, seconded by Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Fifth, that the bylaw notice enforcement, that the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw be introduced and read a first and second time by title only.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, and second by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. And sixth, that the bylaw notice enforcement be read a third time. Thank you, Councillor Morrison, seconder. Councillor Daly, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We got through that piece of business. That's great. We're moving on. We've got a big agenda tonight. Emergency Management Program Bylaw. We made a commitment to improving our emergency management capabilities, and we put some processes in place, and this is asking that the Emergency Management Program Bylaw number 3431 be finally adopted. Thank you, Councillor Daly. Seconded by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thanks, Council. Emergency Management Appointment. We are looking to have someone now run what we're doing. And the recommendation is that Len McCharles be appointed as the Director of Emergency Management for the City of Nelson. Thank you, Councillor Warmington. Seconder, please. Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Chief McCharles.
See how easy that was?
And just like that, and I think, okay, we're skipping, we've already dealt with 10B, we're moving to 10C, and this is Recycle BC. And the recommendation is that council ratify the Recycle BC Statement of Work for Curbside Collection Services and the Recycle BC Statement of Work for Multifamily Building Collection Services. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Warmington, on the mark tonight. All right. Is there any, yes, would you like to?
Quickly,
We're kind of held hostage.
Should we
it's
have
up
to start
to,
paying?
it's really the province that negotiates with Recycle BC, and we're the hostage of that negotiation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the rates are the same. It's not like you're negotiating individual rates with Recycle BC. I think the report is pretty self-explanatory. We're going into the next 5-year cycle. I think in terms of how we deliver this program, we've been very cost-effective in delivering this program, and that's allowed us to, to be able to do this program without passing additional costs on to our citizens. The flip side of that is that because we're under this program, we are strictly a collector. We do not determine what product gets collected. We do not, we have to meet certain contamination rates, and we're responsible for getting that education. It's council's aware. We did make a concerted effort on reducing those contamination rates, and I think it's pretty well known out there with the Chinese not accepting recycling that there's a significant problem out there. Recycle BC has done a pretty good job of finding markets for their product, but that's because they have high requirements around that. Some of the stuff, the problem with China, what was being shipped to China was garbage, half of it, and not recyclable material, and Recycle BC has been pretty diligent on ensuring the product that they collect can be recycled.
Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to plug myself in here. Are there any further questions on or discussion on this motion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to the flag policy. That was another
Favorite.
Very, very energetic meeting. This is for adoption, and we've had 3 readings on this policy as amended. So first, that the flag protocol policy number 0710-003 be adopted. Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Secondly, that the community flag and street banner policy as amended be adopted. Thank you, Councillor Warmington. Seconder, Councillor Morrison. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll go on to the Sustainability Awards Policy. And
You
we,
guys happy you're passing more policies before the end of your term? Policy.
so we,
Amending the policy.
so
There'll
we.
be no work left for the next group. They don't have to show up.
Everything's,
Yeah, it's all
everything's-
done. They can take the next 4 years off.
Let's take it off, yeah. No more long meetings. So we amended this policy to better, we were having a lack of response, so we thought, this isn't good. The city's giving away some money and recognizing good leadership, and so we have amended the policy so we get better uptake. So this is to adopt the Sustainability Leadership Awards policy as amended on October 9th. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Daly, and second by Councillor Warmington. Is there discussion on this? Nope. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have some council action items. We have the action item listing. Is there any of those items that you would like some reports on?
I have a question about
Yes,
the
go ahead,
action
Councillor.
item list. I didn't see the letter, a climate accountability letter on there.
Yes, how are we doing with that?
How are we
Is it
doing
my
now?
court?
Yeah, it's, happy to work with you on that. It'd be great if we could bring it forward at the next
Sure.
meeting.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Sherbrooke.
Did we conclude the council indemnity policy? I thought there was a couple.
Yes, we did.
We did?
Yes.
Covered everything?
We deferred some of that to the next council. They
that's
do
what
have
I'm
to have some
thinking.
work.
That's what I was thinking of.
Could I have someone move receipt of this action item listing? Thank you, Councillor Warmington, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have minutes from committees and commissions of council from the Nelson and Area Economic Development Partnership, the Library Board, and the Cultural Development Committee minutes. Could I have someone move receipt?
I'll move receipt.
Thank you, Councillor Sherbrooke, seconder. Councillor Morrison, all in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And we have some reports here. We have the Finance Department and Building Department report. Mr. McClure, is there anything you'd like to draw our attention to?
No.
I'll move receipt.
Okay, then. It's
You know
all
what?
in there.
I would like to draw attention to how extremely busy our Development Services Department is. 148 building permits, $25 million in construction. We have, as I mentioned before, we have over 200 units that are in the process. Council approved a 125 unit assisted care facility. We have Nelson Cares project. We have the
Jim Weimer's project.
Is that what they call them? First community, first.
Nelson Cares is shut down for a
Jim
moment.
Reimer's project.
Thank you.
We
Kootenai
have
Christian Fellowship.
Kootenai Christian. Yeah, no, it's not Kootenai Christian Fellowship.
Well, they have a new name.
It's a society, right? They have.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing for people to remember on that project, BC Housing is actually going to be the owner of that.
Yeah.
That property. It will not be Kootenai Christian Fellowship or the society. The society will be the operator, but the owner of the property will be BC Housing, and it's fully subsidized by BC Housing. It's meant to house people that are that are working in our community that have lesser paying jobs than other folks. So it's not a social housing project. It's really a project to provide housing for those that are struggling to pay the rents at the market. The 205 Hall Street, Council approved the zoning change on that property. That's another 42 units, I believe, that is planned to go ahead with some commercial that will round out that corner and be a good addition. So we're super busy this year. We're looking at to being just as busy or busier next year. And, I think that speaks well to, both our nonprofits that have jumped on these funding opportunities and, the confidence in our community when you have a private developer coming in here to build 125 units. That must be a $30 million building.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it has been extremely busy, and once again, it just speaks to how our city's doing in terms of development, in terms of business, in terms of housing. There's always something happening, and for a small department, it works really hard.
Not only do that, they run a committee to do lighting.
Yeah, exactly, and come up with a lighting plan.
You know, just if I may, it's interesting when you think about the math. There are projects coming in for housing for service workers and that, but that one project is 175 new workers, new jobs. And I don't know that we've kept up even with that. It's great to have the development in the business and the housing for seniors to age in place here. It's going to be where do they get housed now?
Well, hopefully that's going to open up, our seniors that are in their single family residence. Yep. That should put those houses back on the market. And
yep.
Again,
My house.
This is in part a supply issue. If we can get
it was quite interesting that they mentioned that when they did their study on seniors, and they're talking about seniors at age of 80 is going to be the average age in there, that there's about 600 to 800 seniors that will need this kind of services, and here's 175. So you're right that some of those seniors are going to come out of and free up some family homes or multi-purpose residences and stuff. So.
Through the chair, I would also say to Councillor Daly that I'm hoping that some of those jobs actually go to existing Nelson residents and it's not a total influx of new residents. But
Oh, yeah.
Not that we don't welcome new residents.
we do welcome new residents, but I think that, there is a need for employment for residents already here.
yeah.
And I'm hoping that
Correct, yeah.
And soccer delivers that program.
Yeah.
So would someone like to move receipt of that? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo, second by Councillor Daly, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, Council, we are on the home stretch. We are going to have council reports, and I'm really sorry that Councillor Purcell isn't here because she was keen to give her report at the last meeting, so I'm sorry that she's ill tonight. Who would like to begin? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I'll start because I don't have a report. I just want to say it's been a great 4 years. And I know that everybody is going to stay as engaged in the city of Nelson, whether they're at this table or not. And I've got nothing to report. It's been a crazy last month. And as all of us know, that when you're on the election campaign trail, it's hard to be thinking about bringing a report to tonight. But anyways, it's been, as they like to say, a ton of fun. So anyways, thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Thank you for your hard work this term too. It's been great. Go ahead, Councillor Adams.
I don't have a written report either like you asked for, I'm sorry, but I agree with Councillor Morrison. The last 4 years has been great, and everything up to now has been good. The city is still moving forward, and that's what we have to keep doing. We can't slow down and fall backwards. And I just hope that continues with the new council and, whoever's not going to get on, and maybe the same mayor.
Maybe. There's an election. It's going to be an exciting election. There's a lot of stuff happening in community around that. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Go ahead, Councillor Warmington.
Well, we have one meeting left, so I'm
We
not
do.
going to say my goodbyes just yet.
Well, this is the official last business meeting,
True that.
so.
That's true. We haven't really talked about UBCM yet, and I did want to point out, from my perspective, that it was probably the best UBCM that I've been to. Having this new government have a year of experience under their belt was so refreshing and encouraging. I really felt that they heard our concerns from last year and really responded to them this year. They had good ideas, were very supportive. I feel that our efforts at advocacy with this government are really having a positive impact. And so I'm leaving on a very high note in that regard. Otherwise, I've been on to my usual meetings. I sat in for Councillor Adams at the transit meeting, the regional transit meeting. And just so people are aware, there is a BC Transit Service review that should be starting anytime now. It's supposed to run in the fall. And they are looking for stakeholder input on needs for additional transit service in our community and in our region, so to put that out. NAEDP is moving forward, as they always do. They really do get a lot of work done. In particular, a community investment project is really getting off the ground now. So if you have some money to invest and you'd like to invest it in local businesses, that's where you should be looking. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Is that meeting Thursday?
Thanks, Councillor Warmington.
Yes. Meeting Thursday?
Councillor
Wednesday.
Sherbo.
Yeah, so I only
Strategic planning
had
meeting.
time for 2 meetings this month. One was the library board, and today was Touchstones. Touchstones was very short today. It was just to deal with the bylaw. So the rest of my time I've been wearing out my shoes like everybody else, and
Be there, but.
hopefully most of us will get back that are running. My concern is that this has been a very good council. I have some concern about who may get elected if I get to return, who may get elected to fill the table.
Well, we're just going to say that everybody's it's gonna rise to the occasion and it's gonna be a good council moving forward. It's gonna be great. Thanks, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
A couple of meetings and a couple of things. I'm going to save my goodbyes till the cow as well.
I see some
I really
today,
appreciate it. I'm having a great month because people are just saying, hey.
You've got twin grandsons, like, for heaven's sakes, why wouldn't you be grinning from ear to ear? That's pretty great.
So I attended the APC and we'll have minutes from that meeting. Culture Days, we were the provincial launch for Culture Days this month, which was quite an honor and a lot of money spent actually on our cultural sector participants for arts and dance and singing. And we did we really, I think, did a great job. The disappointment was, it was maybe a couple hundred people that participated, at least in the opening, and I know there was events all week, but lots going on, and it's tough to compete with everything, but that we got selected, I think that says a lot. And
Are we the only community outside of the Victoria and Lower Mainland to host this thing?
Possibly. And part of that, I don't know how that influenced us getting it, but our own Pat Henman is now on the Provincial Cultural Development Committee and
She
spoke.
sure is.
And what a great rep she's going to be for us. I think they just want to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We got, more they want to know what we're doing. Attended a fentanyl task force. With the fentanyl task force, which is an initiative of the chief of police, and there's 4 parts of that. I sit with the emergency first responders and talk about the impact of responding to overdoses and how they can do that better, how they can work better together, and as well the impact on the responders and what they need to do for self-care. And so we spent a fair bit of time around that, and it just being aware and looking at best practices for managing our employees that are responding to these traumas. And so we're looking at making sure we do that right. Also attended the Green Home Show, which was I think it's the 5th year maybe.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Is it? But it's always great, and if you want to find out something that's going on new in technology and that's a great place, and there's lots of people there. It's a good time. If you've never been, you've got a plan to go.
Well, I think they announced that Nelson Hydro will be managing the EcoSave program for the region as a whole.
That's right too. Yeah, that was a big announcement there, that they're rolling out the different programming and incentives and managing that part for them. So,
And I think that really speaks to the strength of our program and how it's been implemented and how successful it is, because I think it's the only one in British Columbia that has actually been successful.
Yeah, and kept the numbers up, and yeah. I also attended something sort of related, but the Rosemont Multi-Generational Project. There's a park there now with the skate park, and I'm involved a little bit with it through Rotary, and we'll see whoever's on council next month. I think we're making a presentation. But the idea is to not just be a skate park, but be multi-generational with the seniors' homes and that have a sidewalk around. So we're starting to raise money on that. So stand by. And my last piece, and I prepared a written something.
Thank you.
And
Good for you.
I take orders. I can I follow instructions. And this report is the Street Culture Collaborative, and I feel really proud of Nelson for initiating this and participating in it. So it's my last meeting with them this past 2 weeks ago. And so I just wanted to read a final report. So this past year, in part, because of a more consistent police presence in the form of an officer on foot patrol, incidents of aggressive behavior by panhandlers on the streets of Nelson has declined. I'd like to acknowledge and give credit for this improvement to the street outreach workers who, by working with Nelson Police Interior Health staff, have reduced the number of emergency visits to the hospital, reduced the number of police-involved events, and because of the efforts of all participants on the Street Culture Collaborative, a group initiated by Mayor Kozak and this council, we're making a difference on the street. This is a provincial and regional issue. And through lobbying these two levels of government, we've had more funding to address homelessness and more supports in place now in the form of transitional housing in Nelson and recovery beds in Castlegar for people with mental health and addiction issues than we did even 2 or 3 years ago. We're making a difference. The group also identified that by working with organizations such as Shambhala, looking for local solutions, we had them, or initiated them extending the camping period beyond the last day of the festival. There were fewer festival, because of this, there were fewer festival attendees recuperating on the streets of Nelson, resulting in less of a negative impact on our community this year, and that should continue. The group also recognized that there's more we can do regarding identifying and developing strategies to address the very few people whose behavior and needs are most challenging. I want to publicly thank everyone involved in this effort, Nelson's social service and nonprofit housing sector, Interior Health, our police, hospital staff, and business owners in Nelson, the business owners in Nelson who stepped up and made a positive contribution to address Nelson's street culture population in a constructive, responsible, and respectful manner. So thank you.
I'm sure you're not running for election.
Very good.
Nicely said.
Can I borrow that for my next question?
Sure you can. I have a copy. And I do believe we've made a big difference, and yeah, I'm proud of being part of that, and I'll find a way to continue somewhere.
Yeah, I was able to attend that one. It was really, I got the same message from the participant, including the business community or business reps there. They felt things have really settled down. There's more work to be done. I think they also identified a strategy. There are, as Councillor Daly said, there are still a core group that's quite challenging. Police has been able to address, unfortunately, some others, and the first response is how do we work with these people to get the proper help, and if that's not successful, then they unfortunately had to go to the enforcement side, and people have been arrested and people have been ended up in jail or moved from our community, but I think that, again, whether it's police or street outreach worker, their first response is how do we help this person to move on, and they've talked about working with them almost on a restorative justice aspect to work one-on-one with those folks that are really challenging out there. So I heard mental health, I heard the nonprofits, I heard police, all are going to get together and case manage these folks that are really quite challenging.
And
Evidently, we're so sorry, we're getting, people from Grand Forks. Grand Forks is not recovering.
Yeah, interesting enough, and do you want to comment on the meeting we had with BC Housing, because they addressed that, right?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. And they are creating housing, yeah.
Yeah, we met with BC Housing, and one of the things that, this council and the mayor has said consistently is Nelson cannot be the only solution for the region. You need housing in those other communities. They need to be able to have the resources to deal with people that are challenged in their own community. So BC Housing has announced that they will build 40 of these low barrier housing units in Grand Forks. They feel they have a population of about 20-ish folks.
20, I think they said that 20 that need the low barrier housing, and then
We met a couple from Grand Forks, and they said nothing is happening. The city
Well,
doesn't.
it takes time. It takes time
No, but let me
to
finish.
build.
The city doesn't have the money to do it, and the feds and the province aren't coming in with
That's
the money.
that's incorrect.
That's incorrect.
That's
yeah.
incorrect,
said
because we
that
just met with BC Housing, and that these folks probably aren't aware of what's coming to
They
their
live there.
community.
They
I
say
know, but they're
currently
not,
Nothing is happening.
That is changing though.
that's
That-
changing, yeah.
These new beds are announced, so.
Yeah, so it just takes time to build.
And it's not only the provincial government, but the federal government recognized this as a national issue, and they are coming forward with a housing plan. And funding. They've increased the funding to our homelessness committee, who actually are having an event tomorrow at the Adventure, 5 o'clock, which is at-risk and homeless youth. So a community consultation on how to deal with that.
The other thing that BC Housing said at that meeting was that,
Speak up.
you know, again, based on input from this mayor and council, that they have been in discussions with Trail and Castlegar about creating
Right.
housing there as well, so. So I think they've heard that we can't be the catch-all for everyone, that you need that support in their own communities.
And I think that there's a real recognition that this is a regional issue. It's not a symptom of just one community, our community, but that if we all pull together and look after the people that live in our communities and serve them where they live, that's the best possible scenario. And one of the things that I think we have to offer in this community is that we have very well-developed social services and people with great expertise in those areas, in various areas. And I think that what I've heard is there's been a generous offer by various people to mentor other communities that may not be up to speed. And that would be fantastic as well. So that gives me a lot of hope that with this government and them paying attention to these issues, that we are making change. And I appreciated all of your reports. They are excellent. And I just wanted to also say that with the collaborative, I've been hearing good things as well. When we were at UBCM, we spoke to ministers about the Street Culture Collaborative, and they were very keen to see what we were doing. And over the course of this election period, I've been having conversations with groups of people, and very thoughtful conversations. Sometimes people are upset, but I would say that for the most part, the people in this community are very caring, generous, and we are a compassionate community. And it's not that you can be compassionate and you can still get a bit upset if problems aren't being addressed immediately, but that doesn't mean that you turn away. You put a shoulder to the wheel and you work with it. And I'm hearing different ideas and ways of moving forward. And I was talking with one person today who's lived in the community for a long time, and the issues of poverty and homelessness and people on the streets, that was back in the 90s. That happened, that's been ongoing for many years. And it's how we pull together supports to help people move up, give people a lift up. And these issues have always been with us. It's just that sometimes they become more pronounced because of the lack of services or the erosion of services for people who are in need. And that's one of the things that we have advocated, I think, quite successfully for here. And we've come up with affordable solutions as well. In some communities, the stepping up of hiring more police officers, for example, many of the behaviors we see are not criminal behaviors. They are nuisance behaviors, but not criminal. And policing is a very expensive service. So the collaborative and pulling together and having other supports in place to help people who are struggling has really helped in that respect too. I really was impressed with our report tonight from development and building stats and all of that. When we talk about the vibrancy of a community and whether or not people want to live here, my goodness, I mean, we are bursting at the seams, and we're encountering all of those issues that come with that kind of popularity, housing affordability, the activity we see on the streets, those kinds of challenges. But I think that with the new developments that are coming forward and with the new council that's coming, maybe there will be some innovative ideas about what we can do in those new developments to create affordability as well. And when we move forward on our vacant land study or allocating some of those pieces for various projects, we have done some of that work already, and there's more to come. I was at the EcoSave Green Home Show as well, and I couldn't believe how well attended it was. Well, I could believe it. It was great. People were running around getting free samples of everything, I'll tell you. But mostly they were really excited to be there, and people were very engaged in talking to local builders and local people who are from our own immediate region who are marketing things that make things better, and that kind of sings to my heart too, and I think to all of us when we're thinking about climate change and those bigger global issues that are affecting us, and how we can, even the small things we do at home make a difference. I had another really nice experience. We swore in a new police officer. I don't know if you were aware, but we have a young police officer who moved here from Calgary. He's got a wife and 2 children, and he's moved into Nelson, and he's very excited and happy to be here. And that was a nice event. We're still waiting for the province to decide on our 2 board members that we haven't got replaced yet. That we had 2 people retire, and we're hoping to get that information soon. Hall Street, wow, that's coming along really well. And people I know are impatient. They want to see it finished, but boy, when it's completed, it's going to be so wonderful. And these great downpours of rain that we had a couple, the last downpour, that new system handled it beautifully. And just to remind people again that these projects were financed through foresight of council and staff people to have applications ready for grants. The grants from provincial and federal levels of government have really helped us to do some major infrastructure improvements. So we're really, really moving forward on that. The conversations I'm having with people, there's one more thing that's coming up, there's a lot of things coming up, but I'm looking forward to our meeting with the Private Forest Landowners Association next week, or is it this week? I think it's
this week.
It's this week, thank you. And that we are going to be talking with them about how we can partner with them in terms of wildfire mitigation and create a better plan. And that connection came through a chance encounter at the UBCM meetings, and they're really keen to meet with us as well. The other thing that I hear, and sometimes people say, well, your staff is really top heavy at City Hall. Well, actually, no, we haven't added any administrative positions. And if anybody's listening to the meeting tonight, if you see all of the activity that we're having with development services and the increased activity, it takes a lot. You need good administrative people to deal with that workload. And if anybody's really interested,
Suggest our development service people are not administrative people.
No,
They're
thank
actually
you.
planners.
They're planners, yeah, thank you. But as well, they work in the administration area of the building, so people might confuse that. But if people are really interested in reading reports, the Auditor General for local governments was set up at the request of the business community, the provincial business community, to ensure that local governments were being prudent in how we spend money. And they've been going around and auditing communities all over the province, and I'd say most communities have come out with flying colors. They audited our city.
Not with flying colors.
One of them. We did, though.
Some less flying.
Some flew a little lower. We flew pretty high, though. And the topic what they decided that they wanted to audit for us was human resources, and there is a report. It's available to the public, and we did very well. And actually, some of the human resources policies and procedures that we have are being recommended to other local governments. So I think we can be pretty proud of that.
Did they audit any regional districts?
I don't know if they have yet.
Don't think on human resources on.
On anything.
No,
they have on. So remember, these are performance audits, so they audit topics. So they've audited on water systems, how you're meeting the regulations around there. They've audited on emergency planning, how communities are meeting there.
Waste management or resource recovery?
No, on capital purchases, they've audited in that area. Human resources, they've audited in that area, and each community's a different audit subject. So we were around human resources, and as the mayor said, that's a good overview of what we've done with staffing, and it was really some of the innovative things of having our CFO act as a CFO for 3 small communities, and how we utilize our staff, having our and our Alex Love, our GM
Hydro
of
manager.
Nelson Hydro, acting in that role for Grand Forks. All those type of things, and you can read the report that states that they recommend other communities look at some of the things we've done here and adopt similar practices.
Yeah, it was. I remember when they said they were coming here. The first thing we did was bristle, saying, "Well, why are they choosing us as one of the first?" And it took a bit of time and energy for staff to work with the auditors, but it was a very good experience, and it actually illustrated to us, I think, that gosh, we're doing some things right. And they had some minor recommendations, but truly, it was a positive experience.
Maybe the recommendations were do more.
Well, that's what council's always saying to staff, so that's like. So, and just in closing, what I'd like to say is that the conversations that I'm having with people in Nelson and the people during this election period are powerful and enlightening. And one of the conversations I had was, I find it extremely interesting that we have 4 candidates running for the City of Nelson Council who don't live within the city limits. And so I think what we need to think about in future is how we are evolving as communities, what we need to prepare for, and how people see the place where they live. So I'll leave you with that. We have another meeting, one more meeting. I'm not going to say goodbye yet. I'm going to hold you all to coming to the next meeting. I sure hope Councillor Purcell is able to make our last meeting. I hope if you're watching, Anna, I hope you're feeling better. So I'll take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Warmton, seconded by Councillor Sherbo with his cap on, ready to shoot out the door, and all in favor.
We weren't finished.
We're not
Need to go
finished.
back
It's not finished.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're not finished. Oh dear, we're going to go back in camera, but that's it for the public portion. Thanks, Councillor.